Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another HMS Psyche training video. Today we've got a very exciting aspect of 18th century history for you, the social activity of playing whist with Tassonyi, our midshipman. I'm going to open up the video to him shortly. For now, everyone's going to stay muted, and if you have any questions, save them to the end, or put them into the chat in the bottom, and we'll get you some answers, or we'll get you some clarification. And hopefully, Rory's two-camera method ends up working for us. So let's just see if we can find our midshipman here. Yes, there we go.
Hello, everyone.
Oh.
So thank you so much, Ryan, for the great introduction. So I think I'm going to start off speaking just a little bit about, what is Whist? Whist is essentially a four-person card game that was popular in England, the Americas, in other countries in Europe, and even beyond Europe, with variation. So it was very popular during the 18th and early 19th centuries, but it has persisted until the modern age. It is a trick-taking card game where two teams are vying to win the most number of points by taking the most number of tricks. Whoever has the most points at the end of the game wins. So some of the history of Whist is that it evolves from the 16th century game of Ruff, or it was also known as Trump, and Whist immediately replaced the preceding game called Ruff and Honors. And it's interesting because a lot of the terminology was actually transplanted into Whist from these earlier forms. So it's first believed to have been played in 1728 by a group of gentlemen who frequented the Crown Coffee House in London. Its popularity arose when Edmund Hoyle, who was a patron of the Crown Coffee House, began actually to teach it, paid to teach it, to wealthy young gentlemen and ladies, members of high society. He later published a treatise, one of several that he published, which was essentially a guide to the various strategies of playing Whist for various skill levels. Whist, the main reasons why Whist became popular is that it was a group activity. It's a four-player game, so you could easily play it out at a party or at home with your family members or private guests. It was a fairly simple game, so it was easy to teach, easy to understand the rules, so someone could be taught the game and get right into playing it. It was also, despite being a simple game, it had a lot of room for strategic play and competitive play. The fact that Whist is still played today, and there's many competitions known as Whist drives happening predominantly in England, but in other places around the world as well, is a testament to that fact. So a little bit just about the etymology, because it's sort of a strange word. So there's two theories. It's believed to either have derived from the 17th century word whist, which means quiet, hushed, attentive, which is essentially it was derived from the way that people would play the game. It was a very quiet game. Or it's also believed that it was originally called whisk because of how quickly the players or the victor would whisk away the cards that he had won. And in later years, it transitioned into whist. So just a little bit about Edmund Hoyle, because he was the main primary source that I used for this presentation. We don't know a lot about him, but we know that he was born in 1672 and that he died in 1768. He published several treatises on various card games and board games, including backgammon and chess. But other than that, we don't know a lot that wasn't in connection to these treatises. So his popularity, because he was the one teaching it, and because he had published all these treatises on how to play, he sort of arose as the foremost authority on the rules of Whist. And he actually, there's a phrase these days the rules according to Hoyle that are based around him, which essentially has replaced, it's a way of saying that you want to read the actual rules of a game. You want to check the official rules. So that is essentially his significance. In 1748 specifically, it's believed to be 1748, he published a work that was titled A Short Treatise on the Game of Whist. The treatise is available online. It's in the show notes that will be posted after this presentation. And if we have a moment during the question period, I will post the link in the chat. It has less to do with the rules of Whist and more to do with strategies based on skill level. And it takes you through beginner, intermediate, advanced, and expert players and the strategies that they should use. So we're gonna jump right in on how to play right now. So first things first, the number of players. Whist during our period was typically always a 4-person game. These 4 players are divided into 2 teams, and they would sit across from one another at a table so that neither player knew what their team member had in terms of cards. That's where you get into a little bit more of the strategy. There are also other variations where you can play with 2 players or 3 players, but those either developed later than our period, or they're much more complex than the basic game. So I'm not going to talk too much about those during this presentation. So the deck that you play with. You play Whist with what we would recognize as a modern deck of cards, a regular 52 card deck, but with no jokers. So you remove the jokers from it. In the period, this was known as a French deck, because depending on where in Europe the cards had come from, there would be many, many more suits or many, many less suits, because these suits were tailored to cultural games, or the decks were tailored to cultural games. The cards in order of rank were ace, king, queen, and the jack, which during our period was known as the knave, and then 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, all the way down. The order of importance and strength is really key to the playing of Whist, so it's good to get that settled. So just to go over a little bit of Whist terminology, because some of the words are a little strange and they mean different things in different contexts. So just to do that, it'll make a lot more sense once I'm going over the rules of the game, but just to give you a little bit of context. So what's known as a lead, or the leading suit, it is essentially the first card played in a trick, and that establishes the lead suit for the rest of the trick, and that's exchange of 4 cards, but we'll get into that later. The trump. Trump is a suit. It's any cards of that suit, and it defeats any card of the leading suit. So, for example, a 2 of the trump suit can defeat an ace of the leading suit. And then we get into the trick. The trick is one instance of play. That a trick is when each of the 4 players places down 1 card, aiming to have the highest number, or the highest card. That is a basic thing, and that is where you win points, is by taking tricks, or by your team winning tricks. A hand is the full play of a single deck of cards, and that amounts to about 13 tricks. Counters. Counters are not counter maneuvers. They are more record-keeping implements. This is more important for during our period, because counters could take the form of elaborate silver mechanisms or copper coins and tokens, etc. But the most readily available to us nowadays, as well as possibly in period, would have been a piece of paper or a wager book and a pen to record. So I think we'll head on over to the rules of the game. First, we're going to talk about setting the game up, and then I will take you through a round of Whist. So to set up the game, the first thing you have to do after you get your 4 players is you have to decide on your system of play. Now, during our period, there were 3 main systems, 2 English systems and 1 American system. So the long English system, which was popular prior to 1800, was based on a 9 or 10 point game. I'll explain the establishing and the recording of points later. The English short game of whist was growing in popularity after 1800. It was a shorter game and was only played to 5 points. The American game was right in the middle, and it only played to 7 points. So whist is always played in a clockwise pattern. So from your perspective, it goes this way around the table. I'll show you again when we switch cameras. The first thing you have to do is you have to select a dealer. There are 2 sort of ways. Either you can choose it arbitrarily, or you take the deck and go around. Each player takes a card. The first diamond to be drawn, that player is the dealer for the first hand. The player to the left, so clockwise of the dealer, always shuffles. But if the dealer suspects foul play, or any of the players suspect foul play, then the dealer has the right to reshuffle the deck. The dealer then deals the clockwise, so 13 cards to each player. And Ryan, if we could switch to the overhead camera view, that would be great.
Yeah, as soon as you turn on your video, I should be able to do so.
You got it.
There you go. I'm looking at court.
Where we, give me 1 minute to the camera. It's not wanting to turn around. And there we go. So hopefully that's all in frame. I have saved the last 4 cards, so I'll just deal those around quickly. The dealer has always dealt their cards last, because on the last card of the trick, or of the deal, the dealer turns it over, and we can see that it is the king of spades. So this establishes that spades are the trump suit for the entire hand. So this card is left face up until the first trick is begun to be played. So the way that a trick begins to play is that the player to the left of the dealer plays first, establishing the lead suit. And they'll want to choose a fairly strong suit of theirs. So maybe we'll go with the knave of diamonds. So then the rest of the players will go around. They will attempt to place higher suit, remembering that the 2 positions that have the red tokens are on the same team, and the 2 positions that have the blue tokens are on the same team. They will continue around, each team trying to place the highest card. So fortunately for the blue team, the player's position I'm in has the queen of diamonds. So they'll go around. It is imperative that every player, if they have a card with the suit of the leading suit, plays that card. So because this player does not have a higher card in that leading suit, but they have cards in the leading suit, they will just discard one of their lower value cards. If a player does not have any cards in the leading suit, they may place a card down of any suit, and this could either be the trump suit, or it could be the or just a card of another kind. If a player places down a trump card or another card, but they still contain, they still hold cards in that suit. So for example, if I put down, because the trump is spades, if I put down a 2 of spades, but as you can see, I still hold diamonds in my hand. If someone calls me on this, it could mean that the repercussions are essentially that there's a penalty of points for the entire team. So I will not play that. If I had played that normally, I would have won the trick because I played a trump instead of a leading suit. So we will award this hand to the player that played the queen, which was, I forget now. We'll just put it there. Essentially, that is now a trick 1 to the blue team, and that will at some point give them points. At the end of the game, the scores are recorded for every trick that a team has won. Then there are 2 ways of officially scoring. This is at the end of 13 tricks and right before the deck is gathered up and reshuffled. The scores are recorded, and the dealer position and the shuffler position shifts clockwise, 1 person to the left. So this position over here would then become the dealer, and the person opposite from the original dealer would become the shuffler. So the various ways that points are scored, there are 2 main methods. The first and most popular one is that no score is counted for the first 6 tricks won by a team. After the first 6 tricks, so after the 7th trick won, that's when points are scored and counted as 1, 2, 3, and so on. The second but less popular and a little scarier method is that you take the total of tricks won by each team and you subtract the lower score from the higher score. The number remaining is the total number of points awarded to that team. So that can either make for very long, protracted games, or it can make for very quick games, depending on how well the players have played. The game is then played until 1 team wins according to the system of play, be that the American 7 points, the British short 5 points, or the British long 9 or 10 points. So now we will move on to betting. As you can see, I have various denominations of British pounds and shillings. If we can switch back to the other camera view, that would be awesome. Great, so betting. This is a big sort of faux pas in terms of media portrayals of people playing at Whist. Whist was not originally intended or set out as a game at which you lay bets or you wager. Most of that comes in by the individual players wanting to wager on certain things, but there is no built-in mechanism for wagering or upping wagers during the game. So the things that people could wager on would be the total number of face cards that a team holds at the beginning of a game. It could be on the number of tricks won in a hand by a team or by an individual. It could also be the point lead of the winning team, whether it was more than 5 or more than 3 or less than those. You could also even wager, against sort of a best 2 out of 3 in terms of how many games a team has won. But that would mean very long games. That would be definitely an evening of Whist. So that is essentially how you play the basic game of Whist. If you want to try playing this at home, you are more than welcome to. As all you really need is a pen, paper, and a deck of modern playing cards. But if you need to maintain social distancing during this plague, or you don't have enough people in your household to play a game, I will be dropping a link into the chat, and it will be on the show notes, to a free online Whist game where you can either play against computer AI, 3 players, or you can set up a multiplayer game, send a link to your friends along with a code, and then you can play against your friends online. And it's a great system. It's awesome to hone your skills at Whist, and the AI is pretty good. So that concludes my presentation. I think we'll open it up to questions now. And yeah, thanks very much.
Fantastic job, Rory. Okay, I'm going to open it up to questions. You've got to unmute yourself before you ask the question. So now everybody has the ability to unmute yourself. If you have a question, do so, and then fire away.
Goodness, I must have answered all of them.
You're that good. Okay, I've got a question. Why is your banyan purple?
It isn't. It's just the light. It's got a lot of purple dyes in the blue. But yeah, originally it's blue. Very nautical.
And I think you're going to need some help getting rid of that wine at the end of this, so I'll be over shortly.
Perfect. I'll leave him out on the front step and we can have a socially distanced wine night.
Okay, I guess the reason why you're not getting any questions is people are unable to unmute themselves, so I'm going to try that again. So everyone should be able to unmute themselves. Strange.
Maybe if people put their questions in the chat and you could read it out, Ryan.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, so we'll go to the alternate system where if you have a question, throw it into the chat, and I'll read out the questions to Rory. So one question we've got from Girth: what does the term rubber mean?
You see, that comes from a later period. There are certain questions about rubbers meaning the majority of games, and that would be settled upon ahead of time by the players. But it's essentially a collection of games that you have won as opposed to hands, from what I remember.
Can Whist be played with a modern set of cards minus the jokers?
Absolutely. Yep. That's the one of the lucky things about cards not having changed from the French 1750s ones.
All right. Claire asks, you mentioned something about only counting points after the sixth suite.
Yes.
Burn. Do you know why this is?
I think it was more to level the playing field and to extend the game. I don't know why exactly they did that when they could have just increased the number of points. But I think it takes out some of the randomness from just what hand you're dealt with. Because I've been dealt, all of one suit, essentially, and everyone else has gotten an even mix of the other ones. But, you can't really participate.
Okay. Girth is asking, is Whist similar to euchre, but with more cards and no bowers?
And it became popular, especially in the Americas, and that's when they started introducing jokers to the deck. But there was a German method that you could play euchre without jokers that involved this thing, and it was fairly similar to Whist.
Thank you, Rory.
Yeah, great, we can hear you now.
Yes.
Yes, I'm manually asking everyone to unmute themselves to hopefully allow for some discussion.
The reason why I asked that question about rubber is I remember seeing in one of the episodes of Hornblower.
Hornblower, yeah.
Where he goes to the private club and plays whist with Admiral Pellew and can't remember what the name of the captain and his nephew. So,
Captain Hammond, and I forget his nephew's name, but yeah. So rubber, it's a predetermined thing where you win a certain number of games and then you win the rubber. It's the majority. So there was another scene in the first episode where he was sitting and playing with the lieutenant and two other midshipmen, or another lieutenant, and he said, "Oh, he's won. That's game and rubber." So essentially means that he has won both the game, the game that they were playing, and he's also won the majority, or he's won to the number of games that they agreed upon as the winning goal.
So was Whist played more by midshipmen and commissioned officers as compared to non-commissioned officers and ratings?
I think that it has a tendency to be displayed as a higher social ranking kind of game, because that would be the level of society that has learned the game and can bet the money and has the time to play such a protracted game as opposed to getting on with their work. Because it's such an easy game to learn, I don't see why non-commissioned officers and different ratings couldn't play, other than the time that they had on hand and the ability to get 4 people together and play.
How long does a typical game last?
Lasts as long as you want it to last. If you want to do a full English set, even a short version, that typically, it really depends on the cards. It could take you an hour or it could take 3, depending on who is playing what strategy and what your luck is with the cards you get handed.
I noticed that you've got bills of tender there. Can you show us one of those and tell us a bit about it?
Yes. So here I'll bring it closer. So these are reproduction bills. See if it'll focus on that. For the Bank of Sandwich, Upper Canada. These were actually reproduced by Patrick Schifferdecker, Captain Schifferdecker. And I was lucky enough to receive several denominations, which stood against my prize money, should I ever receive any, so that they could be used for, playing whist and other card games and things. Yeah, they're lovely reproductions, and they've been done on period laid paper, and yeah, they're wonderful. I don't know if Captain Schifferdecker is here watching the presentation or not, but thank you.
Yeah, he actually mentioned that gambling wasn't allowed on the lower decks.
Yes, that's true.
By the way, I think I fixed the unmute issue, so if anyone did want to speak up, by all means speak up. If not, Rory will just continue sitting there drinking the wine and making us all very thirsty.
Not such a bad night. It's a usual whist night.
Rory, I have a few things that I'm going to send your way.
Ooh, yes, please. Yeah, I had a hard time finding sources.
Well, Mr. Short wrote a very nice pocket hints for whist.
Okay.
I'm finishing laying it up. And then I found
nice.
This wonderful whist counter.
Ooh, yeah. I've seen some images of some really cool ones that were almost like, imagine like an egg timer, but it was a silver hand and it just pointed to numbers. But yeah, definitely. Yeah, please send those because I would love to have those.
Hey, Rory.
Hey.
Nicely done. Do you have a resource or a link that you might be able to provide that gives an overview of the information that you just provided, essentially the rules of play?
Yeah, absolutely. I wrote up a series of show notes. It's about 3 pages of just everything that I've just presented on, but in a little nicer, more cohesive detail. I will post those on after the presentation. I just have to reformat them, and I will also post. I'll have a resources section that I found a few interesting websites, some like Revolutionary War things that they've set out that are also really concise. So I'll put that all in there, and those will be on the show notes.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Well, I look forward to an occasion when 4 of us can be 6 feet apart and playing a game of whist.
Mm-hmm.
especially
Yeah,
with
that'd be good.
a gentleman from the 41st Regiment of Foot, so we can win some money from the lobsters.
I'm all for it.
Well, they say the British Army is a weapon projected by the British Navy, so we're all one and the same.
Hear, hear.
But we are the senior service.
Since time immemorial.
The geriatric service, more like.
Oi.
All right, well, seeing no more questions, thank you very much, Rory. Thank you, everyone, for
Oh,
attending.
thank you.
We will post this as a recorded video in about a week's time. We'll get the speaking notes that Rory mentioned up. And if you have any other questions, you can post them on our website. Please do continue to follow our virtual training and our upcoming sailing adventures. And we hope to see you on the boat sometime soon. For now, stay safe and maintain a positive psyche.